What if the person tucking you into bed was the one poisoning your dreams? Every night, Anna drank tea from the man she once called her safe place, and every morning, she woke up a little less herself. It wasn't until she pretended to fall asleep and opened her eyes at the right moment that the mask slipped. What she saw didn't just shatter her trust, it shattered the entire life she thought she had. It started with tea, a simple ritual, a steaming cup, a soft smile from across the table. Every evening, without fail, Hans would set the cup gently in front of her and say, "Drink this, my love. You've worked too hard again." And Anna, exhausted, grateful, would sip. For most couples, it would have been an act of affection, but for Anna, it became a slow descent into something she couldn't name. From the outside, their marriage was enviable. A spacious apartment in Berlin, weekend brunches with friends, vacations in Tuscany. He was attentive, successful, charming. But behind the warmth of wood floors and soft lamplight, something was off. Not wrong enough to scream, but just off. The way Hans's eyes lingered too long, the way he always brewed the tea, never missed it. The way she couldn't remember falling asleep anymore, only that she woke up every morning like something inside her had vanished. At first, she told herself it was stress. Work was brutal. Her mind was tired. But as the days blurred together and her body felt like it didn't belong to her anymore, Anna started to question the one thing she'd never doubted before. Was her husband truly the man she thought he was? At first, it was just fatigue, the kind you chalk up to long work hours, to Berlin's gray winters, to being a woman in a world that never slows down. Anna would sit at her desk, stare at the screen, and forget why she opened the file. She'd reread the same email 3 times and still not understand what it was saying. Her once razor-sharp mind, trained to detect errors in billion-euro budgets, now stalled on simple tasks. Numbers blurred, words slipped through her memory like fog. And behind her polite nods in morning meetings was a woman barely holding it together. Sleep offered no rescue. Each night her limbs felt too heavy, her eyelids too stubborn. And yet when she collapsed into bed, it wasn't rest. It was something deeper, stranger, like being sucked into a black hole where time didn't exist. She'd wake hours later with her mouth dry, her head pounding, and a strange ache in her stomach, as if something toxic had passed through her in the night. Still, she told herself, "You're just overworked. It'll pass." Even when she started forgetting names, even when she once called her assistant by the wrong title twice, even when her boss, Mr. Schmidt, raised an eyebrow in that silent, sharp way he did when something was off. Even then, Anna smiled and lied to herself. The dreams came slowly at first, then all at once. Dark corridors with no end, shadowy figures standing just out of reach, and voices, whispers that felt too close, too personal, speaking in tongues she couldn't understand but somehow feared. She would wake up breathless, sheets twisted around her legs, sweat clinging to her skin like a warning. Sometimes she swore she saw someone in the room, a flicker in the corner, a presence that vanished the second she blinked. Hans, of course, would laugh it off. "You always dream vivid when you're stressed," he'd say, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. His touch was gentle, but she flinched. The line between dream and reality was blurring. She'd find herself in the middle of the hallway without remembering how she got there. One morning, she woke up with her phone under the bed and her laptop still open, email half-typed, cursor blinking like it was waiting for her to come back. And then there were the nights she didn't dream at all, only darkness, complete swallowing darkness. It should have been restful, but she woke up more tired than before, like her body had been somewhere her mind wasn't allowed to follow. There was something deeply wrong. She didn't have proof. No bruises, no pills, no blood. But her gut, the same instinct that had once saved her from a bad client merger, from a fraudulent investor, from hiring the wrong team lead, was screaming. Something is happening to you, Anna, and it's not just in your head. 6 months ago, Anna walked into rooms like she belonged there. She didn't just participate in meetings, she ran them. Her voice, clear and confident, could silence a room full of executives. She wore tailored suits, memorized figures without notes, and handled million-euro accounts with a steel calm. She had a rhythm: morning coffee by the window, gym at 6, email triage by 7:30. Lunches were short, efficient. Evenings were for books, music, sometimes long calls with Clara, where they'd rant about the absurdities of corporate life. She was sharp, she was self-made, she was in control. Now, she forgot to wash her hair. Missed a deadline and cried about it in the office bathroom. Showed up to work once in mismatched shoes, only noticing when a younger intern politely pointed it out. Her confidence wasn't eroding, it had crumbled. She'd stare at the mirror in the elevator, barely recognizing the woman reflected back at her. Pale skin, hollowed eyes, a kind of distant fog behind her gaze. She tried to revive the old Anna, bought fresh flowers, reorganized her closet. Watched old TED Talks on discipline and productivity. Nothing stuck. The worst part wasn't that she was falling apart. It was that no one seemed to notice. Not Hans, not her boss, not even herself, until the reflection became too quiet to ignore. She wasn't living, she was drifting. And deep inside, a whisper: "Where did you go? Anna." Hans still smiled, like nothing was wrong. He still kissed her forehead in the mornings, still asked about her day in the evenings, still said, "You look tired, sweetheart," with that same smooth concern that once made her feel seen. But now it felt scripted, too perfect, too even, like a line rehearsed just enough times to feel real. There was something in his smile that didn't match his eyes, a flicker, a delay. The corners of his mouth lifted, but his eyes didn't follow. And Anna, once oblivious, now hyper-aware, began noticing the cracks. One night, she watched him brew her tea, watched the way his hands moved with muscle memory precise and calm, watched how he turned his back ever so slightly, just enough for her not to see what went in the cup. Her stomach twisted. She didn't want to think it, didn't want to believe it, but the whisper came anyway, sharp and cold as ice. What if Hans is the one doing this to you? He was her husband. The man who held her hair back when she was sick. The man who once built her a bookshelf by hand because she cried when her old one broke. He had seen her at her best, at her worst, and stayed. But now he smiled too easily, touched her shoulder a little too deliberately, watched her sip that tea with just a second too long of a gaze. She looked back at him across the dinner table. He smiled again, and this time, it didn't feel like love. It felt like a performance. It was 12:07 p.m. on a Thursday when Anna made the call. She was sitting in the corner booth of a cafe just 3 blocks from her office, hands wrapped around a lukewarm espresso she hadn't touched. Outside, Berlin moved with its usual rhythm. Trams clattered, people rushed past glass storefronts. But inside her chest, everything felt suspended. She opened her contacts, scrolled past colleagues, clients, family. Stopped at Clara. Her thumb hovered, just for a second. Then, with a breath that trembled, she pressed call. Clara picked up before the second ring. "Anna?" she asked, instantly alert. "What's going on?" Anna tried to steady her voice. I think something's wrong with me." There was a pause, a deep, listening pause. "Go on," Clara said gently. Anna told her everything. The fatigue, the fog, the blackouts, the tea, the stairs, the dreams. Her voice cracked when she said, "And I don't know if I'm crazy or if I'm being poisoned." On the other end, Clara was quiet, but not with judgment. She was processing, calculating. Finally, Clara spoke, calm, clinical. Anna, listen to me carefully. You could be experiencing the effects of a sedative. Some of the stronger ones, especially if taken regularly, can cause fatigue, disorientation, memory gaps. They dissolve in hot liquids. They're colorless, tasteless, almost impossible to detect without a lab. Anna's breath caught. Are you saying you think Hans is drugging me? I'm not saying that, Clara replied, steady as steel. I'm saying you need to find out. Then she added, and Anna, don't drink that tea tonight. The cup was warm in her hands, familiar, fragrant, a soft wisp of steam rising in lazy spirals, just like every night. Hans placed it on the kitchen table with practiced grace. Here, darling, he said, brushing a kiss on her temple. You've had such a long day. Anna smiled. Or at least her mouth did. Inside, her pulse thundered. She wrapped her fingers around the ceramic, like always, lifted the cup to her lips, and paused. A breath, a beat, a moment to memorize the scent. Chamomile, maybe, with something just beneath it, something metallic, almost sterile. Hans watched her, not obviously, but too closely, like a magician waiting for the trick to land. She tilted the cup slightly, let a few drops touch her tongue, then stood up with a tired sigh. I'll finish it in bed, she murmured. Hans nodded. She walked slowly, deliberately down the hallway, cradling the tea like a promise. But once out of sight, her steps sharpened. At the bedroom door, she veered toward the potted plant near the window. In one fluid motion, she tipped the contents into the soil. The liquid disappeared, soaking into the roots. The leaves quivered. Anna stared at the plant a moment longer than necessary, heart hammering. Then she climbed into bed. She turned on her side, pulled the blanket up, and closed her eyes. Not to rest, but to listen, to wait, to finally know. She waited, long enough for the hallway to fall silent, long enough for the door to creak shut. Then she opened her eyes. Anna lay perfectly still, her breath slow and measured. From the faint sliver of hallway light spilling under the door, she knew he hadn't gone to bed. He was still awake. And then came the sound. Click. Soft, calculated keystrokes. She sat up slowly, careful not to make the mattress creak. Slipped out from under the blanket like a whisper, bare feet on the cold floor, her body tense but her mind focused. She crept toward the slightly open bedroom door, peered through the crack. And there he was, hands, sitting at her desk, back hunched, face dimly lit by the glow of her laptop screen, moving with purpose, not curious, not browsing, extracting. Anna's stomach dropped. She watched as he opened her private folders, bank statements, tax records, insurance files, even her will. One by one, he copied documents to a USB drive. Screens flashed, file names appeared and vanished. His movements were methodical, practiced. Then he reached for his phone. Snap, snap, snap. Photos of her screen, of sensitive information. He wasn't just snooping, he was building a plan. Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream, but instead she watched, paralyzed. Each click, each photo was a betrayal, a tiny, invisible knife pressed deeper into the back of her trust. And Hans, he didn't even hesitate. She barely made it back to bed in time. The hallway creaked, soft, deliberate footsteps. Anna, dove under the blanket, turned onto her side, slowed her breathing, counting each inhale, each exhale. The door creaked open. She didn't move. Hans stood there. She could feel his presence before she even saw him, a shift in the air, a weight in the room. He approached the bed slowly, his breath warm, brushed against her cheek. Then came the whisper, "Sleep tight, my love." The same words he'd said 1,000 times before, the same gentle tone, the same rhythm, but this time it felt like a sentence, not a comfort. Like he wasn't wishing her rest, he was ensuring silence. Her skin prickled. His hand grazed her hair, tender, soft. A gesture once full of affection, now laced with something unspoken. Something off. She forced herself to remain still, eyes closed, limbs limp. Inside, her heart pounded so violently she was certain he could hear it. Then, silence. Hans stepped back. The floor creaked again. The door clicked shut. Anna didn't move for several minutes. Couldn't. She lay frozen in the dark, feeling like she had just survived something, even if she didn't yet know what. It was raining. Not a storm, not dramatic, just a quiet, steady drizzle that tapped gently against the windows of Anna's apartment. The kind of rain that made the world feel slow, heavy. She stood by the door, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the hallway, waiting. When the buzzer rang, she jumped. Clara didn't just arrive. She arrived with purpose. She pushed open the door, her coat soaked, a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, 2 cardboard boxes in her arms, and a look in her eyes that said, "No more pretending." "Close the door," Clara said, voice low but urgent. "We don't have much time." Anna did as she was told. Clara placed the boxes on the kitchen counter, unzipped the duffel. Out came folders, envelopes, legal documents, backup drives, an empty phone. "This," Clara said, handing Anna a thick envelope, "is your emergency identity file. Passport copies, bank info, your grandmother's necklace. I even packed spare keys." Anna stared at the envelope like it might burn her hands. "It's really happening," she whispered. Clara didn't blink. "It's already happened. Now we respond." There was no panic in her voice, no pity, just action. For the first time in weeks, Anna didn't feel like someone unraveling. She felt like someone plotting. And Clara wasn't just her best friend. She was her co-conspirator now. They worked in silence, not the silence of fear, but the silence of strategy. Anna moved with a calm she hadn't felt in weeks, focused, intentional. Each motion deliberate, like muscle memory from another life. A life where she led teams, closed deals, outsmarted rivals. This time, her opponent wasn't in a boardroom. He was in the other room, sleeping, or pretending to. Clara laid out the checklist on the kitchen table. Original documents, birth certificate, marriage license, property deeds, insurance policies, will, jewelry and valuables, emergency cash, external hard drive with password vault. Discrete photos of evidence. Anna opened her laptop, not her main one, the old backup. She logged in, changed passwords, all of them. Banking, email, cloud, even the alarm system app. Each change felt like regaining a piece of herself. She then pulled out a manila folder from her drawer, a printed record of recent bank activity. And there it was, just as she feared. A loan application in her name, filed without her knowledge. Her hands clenched, but her voice stayed steady. "He's not just drugging me," she said. "He's trying to erase me." Clara nodded grimly. Not anymore. By 2:18 a.m., they had packed a duffel with every essential. The rest could burn. Anna looked around the apartment one last time. The books, the plants, the framed photo of her and Hans at Lake Como. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She zipped the bag closed. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like herself again. Her phone rang at 9:03 a.m. She almost didn't answer. She was standing in Clara's apartment, bag by the door, coat on, ready to leave for her first legal consultation with Friedrich Mueller. The name on the screen, Hans. Anna stared at it, let it ring twice, 3 times. Then she answered. "Anna?" His voice cracked, sharp, frantic. Why are you ignoring me? I've been calling all morning. She stayed silent. Where are you? He barked. What's going on? Anna took a breath. Not shaky, not scared, just steady. I know everything she said. Low, controlled, precise. Your lies, your games, the documents you stole, the tea, the loan in my name. Lena. The other end went dead quiet, the silence of a man caught mid-lie. I don't know what you're talking about, Hans stammered. I would never hurt you, Anna. You know that. I love you. Her voice turned sharp, slicing through the line. You call this love? Drugging me? Trying to erase me while I sleep? No, that's not. But she didn't let him finish. I'm filing for divorce, Hans. Her words were ice. And I've already started legal proceedings. You'll be hearing from my lawyer today. Another pause, then a desperate whisper. Anna, please, don't do this. She didn't answer. She hung up, and this time her hand didn't shake. The email came at 10:42 a.m. Subject line, see attached, urgent. Anna sat in the waiting room of Friedrich Mueller's law office, fingers still cold from hanging up on Hans. She opened her laptop, clicked. The message was brief. Anna, as requested, I had our tech specialist review Hans's recent digital activity. We've intercepted several email threads that I believe you need to see. FM. There were 4 PDFs. She clicked the first one, and that's when her stomach dropped. From Hans W. Hans, wetprivatemail.de. To Lena S. lena.s@investconnects.eu. Subject, timeline, passport appointments confirmed, transfer scheduled. She still suspects nothing. Anna's practically ours. Once the loan clears, we're gone. From Lena S. to Hans W. Subject, re-timeline. You'd better not screw this up. I want the penthouse, the Madrid one, and don't forget the Porsche, you promised. From Hans W. to Lena S. Of course, darling. Soon we'll have everything. The accounts, the car, the quiet life we always talked about. Just keep her calm until we're ready. Anna froze, staring at the screen, heart pounding so hard it felt like her ribs might break. They weren't just betraying her. They were erasing her, replacing her, mocking her. Her name, Anna's, practically ours, burned into her mind like acid, as if she were not a person but a possession. She scrolled to the final attachment. From Lena S. to Hans W. Is she still drinking the tea? And Hans's reply, every night, like clockwork. Anna slammed the laptop shut. Clara, sitting beside her, reached out instinctively. Anna didn't speak, didn't cry. She just stared at the wall ahead and whispered almost to herself, I was never his wife. I was his exit plan. She read the emails again and again, as if the more she looked, the more the words might change, soften, make sense. But they never did. Anna's eyes scanned the lines that had already burned into her brain. Anna's practically ours. Don't forget the Porsche. She still suspects nothing. Each sentence was a knife, not just because of the betrayal, but because of the casual way they spoke of her, like she was furniture, a locked vault, a thing to be handled, cleared, discarded. They didn't even hate her. They didn't even fear her. They simply didn't see her as real. And somehow that hurt worse. She remembered the nights she sat across from Hans, sipping tea, sharing her dreams, her fears, her childhood stories, while he had already started replacing her, while Lena was already planning their new life, a penthouse in Madrid, a sports car. The life Anna had worked to build now promised to someone else. Clara sat beside her, silent. She didn't offer empty words. She didn't say, you'll get through this. She didn't have to. Because Anna wasn't crying. She was watching the fire grow. She folded the printouts, slipped them into a folder. Her fingers didn't tremble. She looked up at Clara, and for the first time in days, her voice was steel. Let's finish this. Grief had a sound. It was soft, aching, hollow. But this wasn't grief anymore. This was fire. Not loud, not chaotic, just steady, focused, burning. Anna didn't feel broken now. She felt forged, like steel pulled from flame. Everything Hans had tried to erase her clarity, her voice, her strength, was coming back to her piece by piece. No more questions, no more doubt. She wasn't going to plead. She wasn't going to warn. She was going to act. While Hans played games in shadows, Anna was building light. She spent the next hour on calls, freezing joint accounts, filing fraud claims, forwarding evidence to Friedrich. Her voice on the phone was sharp, her words surgical. She didn't stumble, didn't soften. The clerk at the credit bureau said, "Ma'am, we'll need verification." Anna replied, "You'll have it in 30 minutes." And they did. She wasn't reclaiming her life, she was reconstructing it, stronger, cleaner, and with walls Hans would never breach again. When Clara returned from a call with the locksmith, she found Anna standing by the window, back straight, shoulders square, eyes locked on something in the distance. "Is it done?" Clara asked. Anna nodded, calm, unshaken, but her voice carried heat. "The part where they write my ending," she turned to Clara, "that's over. Healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in quiet mornings, in cups of coffee she finishes while they're still hot, in small moments that don't demand anything from her." Anna traveled alone. Vienna, Prague, no itinerary, no expectations, just a carry-on, a worn sketchbook, and the quiet thrill of waking up in a city that didn't know her name. In Vienna, she wandered the Belvedere Museum for hours. She stood in front of Klimt's The Kiss, unmoving, letting the gold leaf blur behind her eyes. She didn't think about Hans, or Lena, or betrayal. She just stood and breathed. In Prague, she sat in old cafes with high ceilings and scratched wooden tables. She filled page after page with pencil strokes, windows, cobblestones, the curve of a stranger's jaw. She didn't sketch perfectly. She didn't care. Every line was a quiet rebellion, a reminder, I exist, I see, I choose. She ate when she was hungry, slept when she was tired, spoke when she wanted to. No performances, no permission, just herself. Each day felt like retrieving a part of her, not the woman Hans married, but the girl who once dreamed under bookstore lights, who used to believe that art could mend anything. Maybe it still could. One sketch, one museum, one quiet moment at a time, she was putting herself back together. She returned on a Monday, hair tied back, no makeup, just a quiet, composed stillness that made people move out of her way without knowing why. The office hadn't changed. Same buzzing lights, same broken coffee machine, same colleagues who whispered too loudly when they thought she couldn't hear. But Anna had changed. She didn't walk faster. She didn't speak louder. She simply stood straighter. In meetings, she didn't over-explain. She didn't apologize. She listened. She responded. She led. 3 days after returning, her boss pulled her aside. Schmidt, who once gave her the "I'm concerned about your performance" speech, now looked at her with a different kind of pause. "We've had our eye on you," he said. "There's a senior position opening next quarter. You're on the short list." Anna didn't flinch. "Thank you," she said simply. And she meant it, but not just for the opportunity. She was thanking something deeper, the version of herself that didn't fold, that crawled through betrayal and shame and came back sharper. At lunch, a junior analyst whispered to her, "You seem different, stronger." Anna smiled, but didn't explain. Let them guess. Let them try to define her. She knew who she was now. Not the woman who broke, the woman who rebuilt. The kitchen was too small for 5 people, but somehow it worked. A bottle of red wine balanced dangerously near the sink. Pots clanged. Bread burned slightly. Someone spilled water twice. Anna didn't care. She was barefoot, laughing. Clara was sautéing mushrooms like she was leading a cooking show. David, her college friend with the loud laugh, was telling a story about getting locked out of his Airbnb in Lisbon. Mira brought lemon tarts that fell apart the moment someone picked one up, and no one minded. The apartment smelled like garlic and joy. Anna didn't talk about Hans, didn't need to. The silence where his name should have been was healing, not avoidance. She didn't need to explain why she'd disappeared for months. They didn't ask. They just passed the wine. Passed the bread. Passed each other the kind of glances that say, "You're still here," and that's enough. Later, when the candles were burning low and the playlist had looped twice, Anna leaned back in her chair, took in the sound of laughter echoing off tile walls, and smiled. Not a small, polite smile, a real one that reached her eyes. This wasn't revenge. This wasn't victory. This was freedom. This was love, not for someone else, but for herself. It was late October. The sky hung low over Berlin, gray, heavy, quiet. The kind of day where you keep your scarf a little tighter and your thoughts even closer. Anna had just left the bookstore, arms filled with poetry and red leaves stuck to her boots. She was thinking about dinner, about what song to play when she got home. Then she saw him, Hans, standing across the street near the tram stop. Same coat, same shoes, but everything else was gone. He looked like a sketch of a man, unfinished, thinner. Taylor. He saw her. Eyes widened. Mouth opened slightly as if the words were there waiting but couldn't come out. He took a half step forward. Anna didn't stop. She didn't speed up either. She just kept walking. Her steps were calm. Her hands didn't shake. Her breath stayed even. And as she passed him close enough to hear the faint rustle of his coat, she didn't flinch. She didn't look back. Not because she hated him, but because she no longer owed him anything. No closure. No conversation. No final scene. Only silence. That, she had learned, was the loudest goodbye she could ever give. They always told her that strong women fight, but no one ever said sometimes strength is what you don't say. Not screaming, not slamming doors, not dragging pain into the light for someone else to recognize it. Sometimes strength is walking past the person who shattered you and not breaking eye contact with yourself. It's choosing peace over closure. It's letting the silence speak louder than any monologue ever could. Anna had the chance to scream. She had the right to rage. She could have dragged Hans through the dirt and left scars where his lies had been, but she didn't. Because real strength isn't loud. It's calm. It's quiet. It's knowing who you are and realizing you never needed their apology to be whole again. He poisoned her tea, but she poisoned his control by walking away. No screams. No courtroom showdown. No perfect revenge plot. Just one woman, one bag, one quiet decision to never be owned again. That's not weakness. That's not surrender. That's power. Sometimes walking away is the strongest move you'll ever make. Not every battle needs to end in a loud victory. Sometimes real strength is choosing yourself, silently, powerfully, and without asking for permission. Anna's story reminds us you don't need revenge to win. You only need the courage to walk away from what no longer respects your worth. Because healing doesn't begin with rage. It begins with reclaiming your voice. And sometimes that voice speaks loudest in silence. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button. Because on this channel, we don't just tell stories. We expose the quiet power that lives inside all of us. Your silence can be your revolution. Join us and never let your story go unheard. Subscribe now to Beyond Boundaries and discover what strength really looks like.